Hey guys, I've always agreed with the theory that there are no such thing as good people or bad people, that everybody's just a combination of DNA and brain chemistry and what they've experienced in their lives, and based on combinations of those things, you know, nature and nurture, people do what they do, just based on that. And that there are just people who just do good things sometimes and bad things other times, and people who do bad things and people who do good things, and some people who do really, really bad things. But I really don't think there's any such thing as a bad person, you know. I think it's just a combination of things that just result in them behaving the way they do. That's not an excuse, that's just a sort of scientific approach to it, because if you look at the way scientists analyse people, you know, psychiatrists and psychologists and people analyse people, you know, there's no such diagnosis as evil or as bad. They're just religious constructs, you know. Evil, that's just a bloody Bible thing. There's no really such thing as evil. No legitimate psychiatrist has ever diagnosed somebody as evil. They'll tell you that they're psychotic or they're psychopathic or they're whatever it is that is about their mind that allows them to do really, really bad things. So I've always accepted that, because to me that seems like the scientific way to understand human nature. And based on that, I don't think anyone's really bad. And based on that, there's nobody that I don't like or nobody that I hate. There's no reason to hate anyone, really. If someone does, there's some dickheads in the world, but doesn't mean that we should hate them. It's just they're just doing what they think is the right thing to do, you know, no matter what that is. Even axe murderers and people like that are just doing what they're doing, you know. They may know it's wrong, they may not, but they're just doing what they're doing. So it's just the way it is. It's not an excuse, it's just the scientific way to look at human behaviour. So having said all that, accepting that people aren't good or bad, people are just what they are based on what they're made up of, and over the years, I was always aware of this 50% thing. When I lived in Australia, we had a company that we used to send out invoices to people for the money that they owed us, and 500 people, individuals and businesses, and half of them used to pay the bill on time and the other half were late. And with our staff, we did some studies about our staff and using the phones illegally, or like using the phones for personal use that they knew they weren't supposed to, but they did. And, you know, just other things like that, filling their cars up with their own personal cars up with our fuel cards, and you know, adding an extra bit of time onto their timesheets and things. There was an underlying 50% kept coming up, about 50%, you know. And on YouTube you see it as well. You'll get some video talking about something really logical and intelligent. Look, you know, we're not going to solve, I saw a good one recently, the guy was talking about hate won't solve anything. You can't solve hate with hate, you know, talking about the Muslim thing at the moment, and, you know, all this hating on Muslims, and you're not going to solve that by hating on Muslims, you know. And I actually made a video about it myself. And again, just saying, you know, you're not going to be able to defeat the millions of Muslims in the world. They're not going to stop being Muslims. They're not going to stop believing what they believe. And hating on them only just makes it worse, you know. And half the people thumbed up the video and half the people thumbed down the video, you know. And a whole heap of people said, well, this is logical and reasonable, and it's obvious. It's obvious that, you know, the more you hate on a group of people, the more they're going to react to it, you know. And the other half of the people, fuck Muslims are bad, let's fight the Muslims, so I started to come to the conclusion that it's this 50% that are holding the world back. It's the 50% that are responsible for the world being in the condition it's in, you know, and you consistently see things like that. 50% of the US people are supporting Trump, you know, which would be the worst thing that could happen to the US, and not a good thing that could happen for the world either, you know, with his decision-making process. But consistently, and you guys watch this for yourselves, watch how often the 50% thing comes up when you look at people, you know, the gun thing. You know, the gun thing, 50% of people in America love guns, you know, want to have guns, and because of them, that 50%, you know, you got 30,000 gun deaths a year, you know. So it just sort of seems that this underwhelming thing. Who's the 50%, right? So you can do a bell curve for intelligence. You do a bell curve for intelligence or IQ or EQ or all sorts of things like that. So if you analyse the human race, you get a bell curve. So if you say IQ, for example, or intelligence, you start off really, there's a small number of people who have almost no intelligence at all, and then it increases, and then in the middle you've got the average people. There's a majority of people are in the centre, and then it tapers down again to the people who are the smartest people, the highest IQ people, or whatever thing you're measuring. So it shapes like a bell. It's narrow at the start, fat in the middle, narrow at the end. So if you put a line down the centre of that bell, and you've got your lower 50% and your upper 50%, right? Now, I'm switching between keeping the camera cool here and keeping me cool. So you've got your lower 50% and your upper 50%. So the lower 50%, now we can't say they're the lower 50% of human beings, because things like IQ and things like that aren't always relevant. So if you take IQ, for example, there'll be some people, so if you say that's the lower 50% of the people with IQ, there'll be some people there who have low IQ, but who are really, really good people, who just are good people, or we already said there's no good people or bad people. They're people who do good things. They don't do bad things. They might have some people in that group who have low IQ, but they do nobody any harm at all, and they do a lot of good things, and they're good people. They're good people. There it goes again. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. They're people who do good things. So we'll take them out of that lower 50 and put them in the upper 50, because they're good. They do good things, right? So that compensates for their lower IQ. And then there's some people who have high IQ, but they're assholes, right? And they're aggressive, and they're rude and arrogant and obnoxious, and they don't add much to society. They don't add anything positive to society. Only a bunch of aggression and nastiness and horribleness. Spend their day writing caustic comments on YouTube. So we'll take them, we'll put them in the lower 50%, and then we'll get EQ, people who have a good understanding of human nature and are good at dealing with other people and nice to be around, and the ones that have low EQ, they're in that group over there. But there's some in there that don't do anybody any harm, and they only do positive things. So we'll take them out and put them up here. Some people that have high EQ, but they're just bloody psychopathic assholes, we'll take them and put them down there. So you could really, if you got the people who actually contribute positive things, and they're good people, and they do good things and positive things, that in the top 50%, and understand human nature and compassion. People with no compassion for other people have to go in that lower 50%, because they're the ones that are responsible for most of the violence and problems around the world. People with no compassion, people that have no understanding of other people's thoughts and feelings, they're the people who don't get the thing that we're talking about with the Muslims. They're the people that they totally understand how they feel if anybody attacks them. You got a lot of hypocrites when it comes to things like this. Some crazy Muslim terrorist attacks us, and our way to deal with it is to go and he killed some innocent civilians. So their way to deal with it is to drop a bomb on another country and kill innocent civilians. They're the idiots that keep the violence happening, because the one extremist guy who planted a bomb, and then the other extremist on the other side who dropped the bomb, and they're the assholes that perpetuate this shit. So the aggressive ones, and the ones that have no compassion for other people, and the ones that think the solution to everything is violence. The solution to violence is more violence. Oh, there's been a gun massacre, let's get more guns. All those fuckwits straight away go in the lower 50%, because they're the ones that are holding us back. Those people in that 50%, they're the ones that are holding us back, because there's enough of them. So they're either stupid, or they're aggressive, or they have no compassion, or they're selfish, or some people actually understand that they're being unreasonable, but they don't care, because it's all about them. They're just selfish assholes. So all those people, The problem is that there's 50% of them that sways things. That's why we're looking at the risk at the moment that Trump could get elected President of the United States. That's a horrific thing. That would be so messy. You know, that would be so messy. There's no way he'd survive his term. There'd be something that would happen. He'd do something really stupid and get America really in the shit, and he'd end up getting impeached, or, you know, people would realise that, you know, it'd be like the UK with Brexit. You know, the UK all voted to leave the EU, and then when it actually happened, they went, oh shit, didn't mean it, and they realised they'd made a mistake. And Trump will be the same. If people vote him in, they'll vote him in, and because usually in the US this is what happens anyway. They vote in people and then hate them. That's basically what they do with every president. So Trump would be the same, but he'd do some stupid shit as well. And that would really, and they go, oh shit, now he's got us in trouble, now he's done this and now he's done that, and eventually they end up getting impeached or something, probably. But the whole reason that we're faced with this potential catastrophe is because there's this 50% of the world that just, you know, he's appealing to them. If you look at what Trump does, he appeals to the people that aren't very bright. You know, we'll build a wall across America to keep the Mexicans out, and we'll make the Mexicans pay for it, right? There's a whole heap of reasons that that's bullshit, and a lot of the people in the lower 50% can't see that. They don't understand that you can't just tell another country to pay for a huge wall, and building a huge wall across between two countries isn't going to keep everyone out anyway. And there's a whole heap of things wrong with that piece of bullshit, but there's a lot of people that can't see it, you know. And then a lot of the other things, he appeals to people who are racist or bigoted or selfish or whatever. He appeals to them as well. So he really is a master at manipulating the lower 50%, the people who are easily manipulated by their bigotry and by their ignorance and by their, you know, issues. That's what's baffling the world at the moment. That I've spoken to a few Japanese people about this recently, and they're not so amazed by Trump because, you know, there's guys like him everywhere around the world, but they're really amazed that he's in one of two candidates to be elected president. They're amazed the American people have allowed that to happen. So, but I think, again, this is one of the things that triggered this, is that it's that 50% thing. You know, there's 50% of the people are really good, do good things, and are really not aggressive, and they're compassionate to other people, and, you know, they're the good people that do productive things. You know, if we're gonna say there's good people, it's really, we'll say they're good people, but just by that meaning, they're positive and they do productive things and they don't do things to hurt other people, and they're compassionate and not selfish. You know, they accept that they live in a society, so that means that you've got to consider the other people in the society and not just yourself. And, you know, that's the 50% of the people that make the world good. And then the others, you know, again, not really bad people, but just that combination. Some of them are ignorant, some of them are aggressive, some of them are selfish, you know. And you guys know yourself, if you think about it, even the people in your own life. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking, oh, is it really true though? And I started thinking about family members, because, so here's the thing about people not being bad. You look at your family members, and most of them you care for, you know, and you think, no, my family's okay. But then when you really start to look at it and you think, if they weren't family, you know, that one's really, really selfish, and that one's pretty aggressive, and that one's a racist. You know, people with racist and bigoted sort of thinking are responsible for a lot of the dramas that we're having at the moment, you know. And if you look at people like your family or your friends, and you know, think, if they weren't my friend or they weren't my family, what would I think of this person? And it's like, well, yeah, actually, you know, Uncle George is racist, you know, and bigoted, and not real smart, and, you know, he'd be a Trump supporter. I don't really want to get into American politics, but it's one of the triggers. I mean, you can't look at the news or the internet at the moment without seeing something about that, and every time it comes up, it's just one of the triggers. There's the 50% again, you know, and the gun thing, there's the 50% again, You know, whenever you see any sort of statistics about human behaviour, you know, the bad behaviour, it's often the 50%. You know, 50% of insurance claims in Australia have some element of fraud in them. You know, there's this consistent 50%, the lower 50%. And I'm not, again, I just want to repeat again, I'm not talking about just intelligence, because there's some people who don't have very high IQ or aren't very well educated, but they're positive, productive people. So as far as I'm concerned, they go in the good 50%, in the worthwhile. Well, let's say positive and negative. You know, there's the positive 50% of the world who add something to the world and make the world a better place in some way, just by being nice to people, you know, or doing something positive, you know. Just by being nice to people, just not being negative, or aggressive or selfish. You know, it's that other 50%. It's the negative 50% that are holding us back with their aggression and their selfishness and their ignorance and their rudeness, and you know. Anyway, I just wanted to run it past you guys, and I thought that now I've run it past you guys, you might keep an eye out for it yourself. See if you notice it, see if you see what I'm talking about. And again, I'm not saying that people are bad. Again, I do generally still believe that negative 50% don't mean to be. You know, I know people, friends and family members that really are in that group, and they don't mean to be. They're not trying to be selfish or aggressive or rude or anything. They just are. You know, they can't help themselves. So anyway, there it was, the negative 50s, the Neggies holding us back. More videos coming soon.